The film begins with a montage of video clips showing Skylar and Dan's happy moments with their friends, leading to the current event. Dan's best friends, Jack and Tommy, are filming the happenings before the special occasion at a hotel. Tommy then starts filming Skylar and her best friends, Lauren and Allison, arranging and fixing the venue. Moments later, Tommy puts down his camera to film the wedding ceremony of Skylar and Dan. Everyone could not help but smile as the bride and groom exchange their wedding vows. Tommy continues to capture the beautiful moments with his camera, focusing especially on Jack's longtime girlfriend, Allison. The attendees gather around the newlywed couple as they share their first dance when the romantic song suddenly turns into hip-hop. Dan can only laugh as he knows it's his wife's doing before joining Skylar on the dance floor. After enjoying their dance, the guests and the newlywed couple listen with smiles written on their face as the best man Jack gives his speech about marrying the one. Later on, while the guests were enjoying themselves, Tommy finds Allison alone at a table, sadness evident on her face. With Tommy's persuasion, Allison shares that she could not help but be saddened and overthink as her boyfriend of 7 years had made a speech about marrying the right person, but it's been almost a decade since she's been with him and he still hasn't popped the question yet. Tommy comforts her by assuring her that she's the most amazing girl he's ever met. The wedding continues and it's now time for the bride to toss her bouquet. Allison remains on the side but still near, while the other single ladies are very excited to catch the flowers. But Skylar suddenly throws it to Allison, whose boyfriend's smile vanishes upon seeing her catch the bouquet. And while everyone's busy, Allison attempts to leave when Jack stops her and asks her what's going on after he noticed that she was in a bad mood after his speech. Allison snaps and tells him that it's ironic how he can make such a speech when he doesn't even want to get married to her. Jack apologizes, but then Tommy appears with the camera. Jack stops him as he doesn't want to be filmed while Allison suddenly enters the elevator. Jack returns to the party with Tommy to give Allison time to cool down. Moments later, Tommy's in the elevator with Skylar's parents to get to the presents. Tommy films as he asks them about the secret to a happy and long marriage. Skylar's parents are devoted Christians who would have preferred the wedding at a church. However, Skylar doesn't want to and they respect that. Suddenly, the couple can see their breath because all of a sudden the room just got really cold. Not a minute longer, the couple suddenly drop dead on the floor with their eyes wide open. The door opens in time and Tommy finds the guests confused and scared as many people lie on the ground, unalive. Tommy promptly looks for his friend and finds Lauren dead. He informs the group about Skylar's parents when they suddenly hear an explosion. Tommy runs outside with his camera and captures as planes fall from the dark clouds, exploding upon impact. They run back inside when an earthquake shakes the ground, forcing them to leave the reception. Upon arriving at the lobby, they hear an ear-splitting shrill trumpet from the dark sky, followed by an aftershock. Jack wants to find Allison, and Tommy informs him that she texted him 30 minutes ago about where she's going. They run outside despite the thunders to see the streets in disarray. While seeking refuge, Skylar shares that the catastrophes are part of the biblical end of the world, where all the good people are gone and all the bad ones are left behind. Tommy doesn't believe in that, as Skylar attends church daily and is still alive. However, she tells Dan that they must find refuge quickly as events will worsen as time goes on. The dark sky starts to spread, followed by a monster-sized rain hail, forcing them to seek refuge inside a school library. Skylar suddenly disappears, so Dan immediately starts looking for her. Dan encounters a teenager, Sam, while looking for Skylar, who appears determined to find a Bible. With Sam's help, Skylar finds one and reads a passage about the rupture to Dan and her friends. The souls of the faithful are transported or ruptured to heaven, leaving a disconcerting array of corpses of sinners and non-believers, causing Skylar to break down. She's confused because she attends church daily and believes that she should have been taken to heaven. Dan tries to calm her down so they can look for Allison, but Skylar refuses to leave. Tommy and Jack argue about Allison's whereabouts as Tommy claims that she might be in a nearby church. Jack is shocked to hear that Allison goes there every time they fight. Skylar insists on staying but caves when Sam agrees with Tommy that they should go to the church. Nearing the church, Skylar begins praying when they hear the shrill trumpet again, followed by a muffled explosion. They can hear the church bells trolling when they suddenly feel something fly by, followed by a screeching and growling. And all these sounds start to make them feel really fearful. And whatever that thing was that was growling and screeching, it suddenly grabs Skylar, and the group finds her seconds later after being dropped on the ground. They run to find her wounded on the back, so Dan immediately picks her up as they run to the church, where the pastor Shay lets them in before the entity can hunt them. While Pastor Shay looks for the nurse, Jack reunites with Allison in the sanctuary, and Allison cannot help but cry in agony after being told that Lauren is dead. Meanwhile, Dan holds Skylar's hands tightly as they get treated. At this time, Tommy asks Pastor Shay if he knows what's happening, and Pastor Shay explains that they are living in the rupture, wherein Jesus will return to redeem all the members of the church or the believers. The church has become the refuge of the survivors, but one of them is pregnant. Pastor Shay runs to the basement to help Nurse Rachel assist the pregnant woman. Not long after, the woman gives birth to a baby boy, but then she quickly realizes her worst fear has come when the child that comes out of her is dead. While shoveling the baby's grave, Pastor Shay informs Tommy that he knew the baby boy would be stillborn because he was innocent. Tommy questions why God would kill these innocent people, but Pastor Shay clarifies that God raptures the believers' souls while leaving their mortal bodies behind. Pastor Shay then shares that his family was taken, leaving him behind because he is an imposter who does not believe but poses to be a pastor who does believe. Yeah. Later, another survivor causes panic when he pounds on the door screaming for help. The people can only scream in fear as they hear the man getting attacked by a demonic entity while cracking the church's window. And because of all this, Tommy decides to let Sam record him professing his love to Allison just in case if he doesn't make it alive. The survivors also watch the news showing that the rupture has occurred worldwide, with children and infants most likely to be taken. The scientists label the unexplainable phenomena as the instant death syndrome, followed by peculiar weather experienced by all. Later, in a private room, Jack apologizes to Allison for taking him too long to realize that he wants to spend the rest of his life with her. Jack then gets on his knees to propose when Tommy suddenly barges in and tells them that he was recording when Skylar got attacked. Pastor Shay also enters the room, and frame by frame they can clearly see the unknown force that attacked Skylar. And it was apparently one of the many fallen angels that appear to torture and destroy the non-believers. And these things cannot be fought, and their coming is actually a signal that more bad things will follow. And in this moment, Nurse Rachel informs Dan that Skylar's wound is getting more infected, and the sample packets of amoxicillin are in her car. And despite the danger, Dan exits the church with Tommy, and they are not even that far when they hear a low growl. The two of them calm down for a bit after seeing a man near a car, but still try to remain vigilant as they look for the nurse's van. Using her keys, the two of them find the van and immediately get to the back to get to the duffel bag of amoxicillin. A man's voice is heard as they start the vehicle, claiming that there's only one way to God. However, the demonic entity attacks once again, leaving Tommy and Dan no choice but to flee back to the church. Moments later, Tommy continues filming with Jack and Allison being the center. Tommy then mocks Jack that it took him 7 years to propose to Allison. Tommy claims that it's not love, pissing off Jack, who forces him to confess something to the camera. With the tables now turned, Tommy has no choice but to confess his love to Allison. Tommy and Jack almost fight when Dan confesses that he slept with a girl in college while still dating Skylar. Dan tried to tell Skylar before they got married, but he just couldn't get around to doing it. After a while, the nurse checks Skylar's wound and informs Dan, Jack, and Tommy that it's actually getting worse and the antibiotics are not working, but she can endure the pain till dawn. And they decide it's best to go to the hospital when morning comes as the demonic entity attacks at night. Tommy walks in as Pastor Shay finishes his prayer, and Pastor Shay cannot help but smile because after years of pretending to be a believer, he finally finds his way to God. With his newfound faith, Pastor Shay attempts to uplift the spirits of people when the fallen attack again, forcing the congregation to flee to the basement. They try to remain silent, but they fail to do so because they were so scared. And Jack opens the door only for them to witness the fallen dragging Nurse Rachel. When they shut the door, they can still hear the fallen's low growl. Realizing that it's come for him, Pastor Shay sacrifices himself and the last thing they hear from him is his flesh being ripped apart. As morning comes, the congregation returns to the sanctuary only to find it destroyed with Pastor Shay's corpse lying around. The group leaves the other survivors in the church to get Skylar to the nearest hospital, and they get there on foot as all the vehicles are blocking the road. However, their hope of getting Skylar professional help is crushed after seeing the hospital in complete disarray, with other survivors fleeing to get to the relief center at the River Fort Bridge. Tommy comes with Jack to find a doctor or any medicine, putting their fight on hold. Despite her weakness, Skylar forgives Dan for cheating on her, revealing that she hurt him. Skylar confesses that although she went to church daily, she never really believed in God. She then sees the bright and beautiful light before exhaling her last breath. Dan can only cry his heart out as the day that was supposed to be the happiest day of his life, marrying Skylar, turned out to be the worst day of anybody's life. Allison prays beside her late friend, but Dan goes outside and challenges God to take him too. Dan repeatedly expresses his hatred to God for taking the love of his life away, and Jack and Tommy tell him to stop, but he continues with his blasphemous comments. And then, a tentacle emerges from the ground and impales Dan before dragging him into the sky. At this time, Allison asks Sam to record her last moments. Not a moment longer, Tom and Jackie run back to the lobby for Allison and Sam. But they only find Skylar's corpse and Sam's phone on the ground. Tommy rewinds the video until Sam appears from her hiding spot. Jack also rushes to the unconscious and fatally wounded Allison. Jack tries to wake her up, but Allison is apparently dead from the Fallen's attack. Tommy repeatedly tries to get Jack to come with him to the relief center, but Jack refuses to leave Allison. This leads to a physical fight which is stopped by Sam, and Tommy is true to his word and never left Jack's side until he's ready to leave Allison later that day. After a long walk, the trio finally reaches the relief center by nightfall and reunites with the survivors from the church. Moments later, Sam shows the last video of Allison submitting herself to the Almighty God and telling them that they have a choice to make before it is too late. Alone with Sam, Tommy realizes that the Fallen is drawn to faith. That explains why non-believers are attacked and killed after finding their way to God. Sam and Tommy rush to find Jack as they hear a loud faith song being played on the radio. They check every tent until they find him newly baptized following Allison's death. They also witness an unknown force break Jack's bones before he is dragged to the sky. The people clamor outside in panic, but Sam reminds Tommy that they have to make a choice. Sam chooses God and walks away before vanishing, presumably taken by the Fallen. And the film ends with Tommy being attacked by the Fallen as he submits himself to God. At the same time, an army of demons emerge from the sky to wipe out the non-believers. And that is how our movie comes to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed our recap. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe to our channel, leave a comment. We'll see you guys on the next recap. Bye.